The show opens in Argentina, where we see three girls in a boat in the middle of the ocean. It turns out to be a farewell party for one of them, and they talk about how they're now grown up. The girls then go out on the deck, where they gaze at the stars and begin drinking. All of a sudden, the lights in the city go out, plunging the place into darkness. The girls notice the aurora borealis in the sky, which shocks them, as it never happens in Argentina. Afterward, a girl named Clara heads inside the cabin and notices that the boat system isn't working and the GPS has shut off. She calls for her friends and soon finds one of them unconscious outside, which horrifies her. Suddenly, the door slams shut, and when Clara peeks outside, she notices her other friend unconscious as well. The scene then cuts to the city, where a huge protest is underway due to the frequent power outages in recent days. We see three men, Juan, Russo, and Omar, who are frustrated because they're stuck in traffic caused by the protest. They have to take a detour and soon arrive at a garage where they hand their keys to an attendant named Vicente. The three then arrive at the home of a man named Tano and his wife, Ana. Tano is very happy to see his old friends, Russo and Juan, but he isn't pleased that Russo brought his brother-in-law, Omar, whom he doesn't even know. There's a bald man named Lucas, who is also their best friend and arrived a while ago. That night, the men gather in the basement where they play cards and enjoy themselves, but Omar feels left out and begins exploring the house, where he soon discovers an old mask, which he finds intriguing. But Juan warns him that Tano doesn't like his belongings being touched and tells him to drop it. Shortly after, Vicente delivers the group a whiskey that Russo had ordered earlier. The group continues having fun, but after a while, the power goes out, plunging everything into darkness. Their phones die all at once, and they hear loud noises coming from outside. The group heads upstairs, where Ana tells them that Vicente is unconscious outside. The men think it might be a heart attack and try to check on him, but suddenly, snow begins pouring out of nowhere, which is impossible because it's summer. Moments later, they see a car crashing into another vehicle, so Tano thinks there are toxic particles in the snow. He asks everyone to close all windows and ventilation ducts to keep the house sterile. Russo now begins to worry for his family and tries to leave. The others try to stop him, but Russo doesn't care and heads out using only his jacket as protection. Not long after, he collapses to the ground and dies, which his friends watch from the window and are shocked. The temperature inside also drops drastically, and now the group has to wear heavy jackets just to stay warm. Next, the group panics over what to do, and Juan begins to worry about his ex-wife and daughter. They soon hear banging sounds again, and at first, they think it's coming from outside, but soon realize it's coming from a hidden door that leads to the garage. They all head there and soon hear a woman's voice asking for help. She reveals that she was the one who delivered their whiskey, but the group finds it hard to believe, since according to the app, the delivery person is a man. Tano then asks why she is still here when they received the whiskey 40 minutes ago. She explains that her bicycle was broken, and while fixing it, she saw snow falling and Vicente collapse, so she hid in the garage. Tano is suspicious of her, but when the others convince him to help, he finally unlocks the door and prepares his rifle just in case. On the other side, they see a young woman who introduces herself as Inga. It turns out she was delivering the whiskey in place of her brother, which is why the app showed a man's name. Next, Juan becomes increasingly anxious about his family and insists on going to find them. The others warn him that he could suffer the same fate as Russo, but Juan is relentless. He and Tano thus carefully wrap themselves in plastic sheets to avoid contact with the snow and finally manage to retrieve the keys from the garage office. Juan feels a brief sense of relief, but when he tries to start his car, it won't turn on. They attempt several other vehicles as well, but shockingly, none of them work, leaving the group in panic. A desperate Juan decides to go out on foot, so the group begins preparing him for the journey. They make him a makeshift hazmat suit using household items and Tano's old mask to protect him from the snow. However, as Juan starts to leave, Omar suddenly reveals his true colors and points Tano's rifle at him. He demands the mask, claiming it was his idea to make the hazmat suit. However, Tano reveals the rifle isn't even loaded, after which an embarrassed Omar finally gives up. After this, Juan finally steps out of the house and sees that the town is completely blanketed in snow. His friends watch him from the window and are relieved that he hasn't met the same fate as Russo and that the makeshift suit is protecting him. Juan walks past frozen cars and the snow-covered corpses of people, including Russo, which shatters his heart. Regardless, Juan keeps moving forward and soon hears someone whistling in the distance. But when he looks around, not a single person is in sight. Then, he notices a strange figure trailing behind him, which prompts him to flee as fast as he can. Back at Tano's house, Anna tries to make tea using tap water, but Tano quickly stops her, warning that it could be contaminated. He also insists they need to ration the food, since no one knows how long the strange snowfall will last. Meanwhile, Inga and Omar, who both feel like outsiders, begin to open up to each other. Omar reveals that he is only visiting and has actually been living in the US for the past 20 years. He fears for the safety of his 2 children back home, while Inga worries about her brother. Back to Juan, he comes across one of the abandoned train carriages, where he finds many survivors inside, desperately begging for help. Their faces light up when they see him, and they ask when aid will arrive. But Juan tells them there's nothing he can do and offers only a bottle of water before turning to leave. The survivors plead with him not to abandon them, but he has no choice but to walk away. Back at the house, Tano notices Inga inspecting his gun and gets annoyed, so she reveals that she is a former military. Frustrated with being cooped up, she decides to ride her bicycle outside to look for her supplies. But Tano shows the group a makeshift mask he has crafted and insists that he will head to the nearby fire station to look for supplies. Inga gives him her bicycle, and they realize its taillight still works because it uses an old-style incandescent bulb instead of a modern LED. Since incandescent bulbs work by heating a filament, they are unaffected by whatever is causing the outages. This sparks an idea in Tano, so he connects an old radio to an old truck battery, and to their amazement, the radio turns on. This excites the group, as this means they finally have a functioning vehicle. Meanwhile, Juan finally reaches his ex-wife's building, only to find the lobby filled with dead bodies. He removes his mask, and soon apartment residents notice him, wondering how he managed to survive after coming from outside. Juan heads to his ex-wife's apartment, but finds neither her nor their daughter there. Instead, he meets a strange man and believes he's an imposter, but the man claims he was sent by Elena to find medicines. The two begin arguing when Juan is shocked to notice snow in his hand, yet he is still alive. Moments later, Juan's ex-wife, Elena, finally arrives and is shocked as she thought their daughter Clara was with him. She explains that Clara went to spend the night with her friend Luna Stefano, and she had even sent Juan the address, but he was too busy playing cards. Since their phones are not working, Juan decides to go to the school to check out Luna's address, but he only has one mask, so he asks Elena to lock herself in the apartment and not open the door for anyone. However, as he prepares to leave, the neighbors confront Juan and demand to know how he made it here and why he survived the snow that was on the back of his hand. They wonder if he is immune, but Juan claims the snow loses its power once it falls from the sky. The suspicious group insists on seeing his mask, and Juan reluctantly seems to comply. But instead of the mask, he shockingly pulls out a gun and tells them to get out of his way. Unfortunately, the residents also pull out their own guns, forcing Elena and Juan to flee. They make their way to the second floor and hide in an empty apartment. Upon hearing the neighbors approaching, Juan urgently tells Elena to find waterproof clothing to protect herself from the snow and gives her his mask so she can get to the school safely. Elena reluctantly agrees, and afterward she jumps out the window and lands on a truck parked below. Just then, the aggressive neighbors finally manage to break in and try to attack Juan. In a quick move, he smashes a window and covers his face with plastic, which finally forces the neighbors to retreat. Juan then jumps from the window onto the roof of a car to get out safely. However, since he is using plastic as a makeshift mask, he eventually runs out of oxygen and passes out. While unconscious, Juan sees a bizarre vision where he's in a desolate valley surrounded by thick fog. Suddenly, a shadowy man appears, and the entire scene changes to red. Juan jolts awake, only to find himself in the cab of an old truck and surrounded by masked figures, which scares him. But he finally breathes a sigh of relief that it's just Tano and the others, who manage to get an old truck running again. They're on their way to search for supplies, and Elena is also with them, safe and unharmed. As the group drives through the snow, they suddenly spot something unusual streaking across the sky, a fiery object that looks like a meteor. They head back to the house, where Tano immediately tries to use the old radio to make contact with anyone, but no signal comes through. Growing restless, Juan demands the truck so he can search for Clara, but Tano firmly refuses, insisting that their survival as a group must come before individual concerns. However, tensions rise when they notice someone outside following the tire tracks toward the house. Everyone arms themselves and is ready for a confrontation, but the figure soon approaches and removes his mask. It turns out to be a local hardware store owner, Benito, whom Tano recognizes. He explains that he needs Tano's vehicle to transport supplies to a group of survivors, but Tano refuses, especially after learning Benito is working with a man named Roberto, someone he distrusts. Their argument escalates, and in the chaos, Omar quietly takes the car and drives away from there, leaving everyone frustrated. Next, Juan and Elena decide they can't wait any longer, so they suit up and head out on foot to search for Clara. Inga also decides to leave, as she's desperate to find her brother. Elsewhere, Omar drives the vehicle down a snowy road when he suddenly sees strange, meteor-like fragments falling from the sky, and the whole sky turning blood red. The shocked guy is distracted by the sight, and he loses control and crashes violently into a store. In the evening, Juan and Elena make their way toward the school, but as the snowstorm worsens, they take shelter inside a car. Soon they notice a group of figures approaching, so they quickly hide, unsure if these people are good or bad. The survivors end up finding an unconscious Omar and carry him away to safety. Meanwhile, Elena notices Juan growing increasingly anxious. It's revealed that he used to serve in the army and suffers from PTSD. She worries he's beginning to break down mentally now that he's forced to use a gun again. The next day, Juan and Elena finally reach Clara's school, only to find it completely deserted and littered with dead bodies. They slip into the office, where they come across a photo of Clara with her soccer team. The two decide to split up, as Elena will look for Clara's friend's address, while Juan searches the grounds for any old car that might still be usable. Elsewhere, Inga finally returns to Tano's home with a car and sadly reveals that she discovered her brother's dead body in the park where he was last seen. The distraught woman blames herself since he was supposed to make the delivery that night. Lucas and Elena comfort her, reminding her it isn't her fault and there was no way she could have known. Tano and Lucas now decide to take the car Inga brought and head to the fire station to search for supplies. Meanwhile, Juan finally comes across a working car, but as he prepares it, he starts experiencing strange visions of fire and everything turning red. At the same time, Elena is searching for information when she suddenly hears a sound coming from a distance. She follows it and soon discovers a boy locked in a closet, demanding to be let out. Juan arrives shortly after, and it turns out that the boy's friends locked him in as a prank, and it's already been 2 days. The boy's name is Pablo, and the couple kindly frees him and explains what's happening in the world, and that all his friends are dead outside. But Pablo doesn't believe them and insults them before running off. But soon, Pablo's eyes are drawn outside, and he is horrified to see the frozen bodies of his friends lying in the snow. The couple approaches him and shows a picture of Clara's soccer team, asking if he recognizes her, but he doesn't. Fortunately, he recognizes her friend Luna, whose brother is actually friends with Pablo and knows the address. The young boy agrees to help them, but only on the condition that they take him home afterward. Elsewhere, Tano and Lucas arrive at the fire station, only to find it empty, meaning another group has already looted it. Tano inspects the area carefully and soon notices several armed men. It turns out to be Benito, along with Roberto and other members of their group. Roberto asks Tano to let him use the garage, which is large and could be useful for the survivors, but Tano doesn't trust them and obviously refuses. They thus give him 24 hours to make a decision, warning that after that the survivors might have to enter by force. Meanwhile, Elena, Juan, and Pablo finally arrive in front of a house, and the couple heads inside, leaving the boy in the car. Unfortunately, the house is completely empty, while Pablo covers himself with a blanket and decides to head inside as well. The couple soon discovers several frozen corpses around the dining table outside and inspects each one, but none of them is Clara. They soon realize these are Chinese people and are shocked to understand that it's actually Pablo's house and he had tricked them. Moments later, Pablo also arrives and begins screaming to see all his family members dead. Back at Anna's house, Tano finally connects with a man via radio who turns out to be from Uruguay. The man explains that their country is facing the same issue and the whole continent is covered in snow because he spoke with someone from Brazil. Before the man can say more, the call is disconnected, leaving Tano wondering why he can't reconnect with the person from Brazil. Elsewhere, Pablo is now suffering from a high fever, but Juan insists on going home to plan how to find Clara. However, Elena disagrees and thinks they should take care of Pablo first, since he's just a kid in need of help. Juan reluctantly agrees, and they arrive at a pharmacy to look for medicine. Elena then gathers a bunch of essential supplies, and we learn that she's a doctor. But seconds later, a pregnant woman appears outside, begging for help and claiming she has gone into labor. Juan is reluctant to help, but Elena insists they can't abandon her in such condition. She opens the door and lets the woman in, but it turns out to be a huge mistake. The woman's boyfriend arrives through the back door and points a gun at them. They steal the car keys and lock Juan and Elena in a bathroom to prevent them from following. However, after the looters leave, Pablo, who is still outside, thankfully frees the couple. Back at home, Tano tries adjusting his aerial to contact the man from Brazil, but soon notices something is wrong with the compass. Shortly after, Elena, Juan, and Pablo return to the house, where the group is preparing to leave the town and head to Tano's other house on the island. Juan asks why Tano wants to go, so the latter reveals that his compass isn't working. He determines that the Earth's entire magnetic field has been altered, which is an irreparable catastrophe, meaning help is definitely not coming. Juan refuses to leave without his daughter, but Tano insists she's probably dead, which is better than this unbearable fate. This enrages Juan, and he asks them to leave without him, as he won't go anywhere without finding Clara. In the next scene, the group decides to bury their friend Russo and holds a small funeral for him. Afterwards, Juan and Elena get into an argument over their next step. Juan wants Pablo to be sent to the island so they can focus on finding Clara, while Elena insists that he is their responsibility. The problem is they don't know how to locate Clara, so Tano comes up with an idea and suggests they look for the girl's address in the town's phone book. Afterward, Tano and Lucas realize they are still short on supplies, so they head to a supermarket. Tano then communicates with Inga via walkie-talkie and learns that Juan has found the address and is heading downtown alone. Upon hearing this, Lucas grows worried for Juan's safety since he's venturing into the dangerous city by himself. Later, we see Juan walking alone in a snowstorm when a car suddenly approaches him. He is shocked to see that it's Tano, who asks him to get inside and suggests they will look for Clara, after which they will head to the island together. Shortly after, they come across a pile of cars on the bridge that are blocking the highway. The pile looks intentional and doesn't appear to be an accident. Soon, some military vehicles approach them, and a soldier warns the duo not to proceed, saying the road ahead is too dangerous. The soldier assures them that the government is sending help from a place called Campo de Mayo and advises them to find a safe place for now. However, the duo doesn't listen and presses forward, but not long after, some soldiers start shooting in their direction. The duo is horrified, but soon realizes the soldiers aren't aiming at them, and they're fighting some giant creatures that look like bugs. The creatures are incredibly strong and wrap one of the soldiers in a spider-like net. Some also attack Juan and Tano, but they manage to escape and hide in a safe place. After the situation calms down, the duo carefully moves forward and notices the bugs dragging one of the soldiers they had wrapped in a net. Shortly after, Tano accidentally hits something and makes a noise, which quickly wakes the bugs, who try to attack them. Juan shoots and manages to injure one, but soon more bugs begin arriving, leaving the duo no choice but to escape. They make their way to a church and find shelter, where a few men throw a Molotov at the bugs and kill them. A man then lets the duo inside a hidden room in the church where the bugs cannot reach them. Afterward, the duo meets several survivors in the church, and shockingly, Omar is among them. He immediately claims that Juan and Tano are dangerous and shouldn't be let inside, but the nun says they accept everyone without discrimination. Juan asks where the monsters came from, and the group replies, "From the sky." Juan and Tano then go upstairs and see countless meteors falling. It becomes clear that these meteors are actually monsters, revealing that this is an alien invasion. Not long after, a small group returns to the church after searching for supplies. Juan doesn't want to wait and is determined to find his daughter, so Omar tells him about an underground tunnel that had been used by homeless people. Omar warns that this place isn't safe to use as a camp, but the survivors are too terrified to go through the tunnel. Afterward, as Juan goes outside to get some fresh air, he has another vision in which he sees a silent march of insects moving somewhere. He returns to the church and finds the group discussing whether or not to leave. Juan tells them he has found a working truck, and the group finally decides to leave, except for a nun and a crippled man. That night, the group packs their belongings and prepares to sneak out when they notice a red light moving in the sky, and Juan realizes that the bugs also sleep at night. They soon find a tunnel that has been walled off, so some of the group begin making a hole, while others hide inside a bus. After making the hole large enough, the group proceeds to leave, but a baby starts crying, which awakens the bugs. Fortunately, the men break through the wall just in time, and the survivors proceed to leave. However, Juan, a mother, and her baby end up being cornered inside the bus by the bugs. It seems like it's over for them, but just then, the nun and the crippled man begin ringing the bell of the old church. The noise distracts the bugs, allowing Juan and the mother to escape and join the others. As soon as the creatures enter the church, the nun spills gasoline all over and sets many bugs on fire, but she also loses her life along with the crippled man. Meanwhile, the group finally comes across the truck, but it is covered by so much debris that they have to retrieve it carefully without waking the bugs. Unfortunately, they end up making noise, which awakens the bugs and prompts them to rush and attack. One of the creatures grabs Tano and begins dragging him away, but just in time, a man throws a smoke bomb, causing all the bugs to retreat in fear. Thankfully, the group manages to retrieve the truck, and the survivors climb in quickly one by one. Juan and a few armed men stay at the rear and fire at the creatures that pursue them. As they drive away, Juan glances back at the burning church and realizes with horror that he had already seen this scene in one of his visions. After driving for a while, Omar, Juan, and Tano get off, while the rest of the group decides to continue toward Campo de Mayo. Upon arriving home, Juan is stunned to discover that Clara has already returned and is currently sleeping. He checks on her and is stunned, as this is exactly what he had seen in one of his visions. He asks Elena where she found her, but she reveals that it was actually Clara who found them. Clara then briefly wakes up and recalls how she remembered her dad always playing cards here every Friday. The next day, the group prepares to leave town, but the problem is that there's only one car, which Inga brought. As they discuss what to do, Roberto arrives and says he has heard rumors about the bugs. Tano confirms it and explains that they are leaving, so Roberto makes him an offer. He proposes giving the group his RV in exchange for Tano's house and garage. After brief consideration, Tano accepts the deal, knowing the city is already on the verge of collapse. With everything ready, Tano and the group board their vehicles and begin the journey toward the island. Along the way, Tano notices a mask Clara was wearing when she arrived and is shocked because it's his mask and was on his sailboat. He informs Juan, but they think it might be just a coincidence. After driving for a while, they finally arrive at the sea, planning to take Tano's boat to reach the island. But due to drastic climate changes, the water level has dropped and the shoreline has shifted, making it impossible to drive through the water. The group now has to find another route, but before they leave, Tano decides to return to his boat to check something. Afterward, they continue driving and soon come across dead bodies on the road, and it seems like someone shot them. Moments later, Clara, who has been sleeping all this time, finally wakes up and greets everyone. Her parents then ask about the sailboat, but she insists she was at her friend's place and not on the boat. Even when they show her the mask she was wearing, Clara claims she has no memory of it. After driving for a while, the group comes across a mall where a few people have taken shelter and seem to be doing fine. Tano also notices some familiar faces from his neighborhood, along with people from church. The group heads inside and find that the mall is large enough for everyone's needs to be met without conflict. They quickly settle in, but Juan warns everyone not to let their guard down, as the people who shot those on the road could be nearby. Afterward, Clara is approached by a boy named Mickey, who has facial paralysis. He chats with her casually, but suddenly Clara behaves very strangely and hits her head aggressively, which prompts her parents to intervene. They take her away to rest, while Mickey is left confused, wondering if her behavior had anything to do with his face. Meanwhile, Juan and Elena begin arguing about their daughter's condition. Juan thinks Clara just needs to rest in a quiet place, like the island. However, Elena believes it would be better to take Clara to Campo de Mayo, where there is a hospital. Tano then intervenes and reveals that his sailboat isn't at the dock, and he's sure Clara took it. He shows the log records of the dock, which include Clara's signature, shocking everyone. That night, Lucas joins some kids to play cards and then leaves to get whiskey. A young boy accompanies him and helps search the alcohol section for the premium whiskey Lucas wants. Lucas eventually manages to find it, but the boy has mysteriously vanished. Soon after, Lucas hears a strange noise and goes to investigate the sound. The next morning, Juan wakes up to see several people running around and quickly grabs his gun. But soon, he and his family notice that it has finally stopped snowing outside and the sun is shining brightly. Pablo ventures out first, and when the atmosphere proves safe, everyone else follows and nothing bad happens to them. Everyone begins rejoicing with happiness that the nightmare is finally over. Tano realizes that the compass is now working, but it's upside down, and south has now become north. They then look for Lucas, but he is nowhere to be seen, which worries the group. They enter the warehouse and find a bottle of alcohol that Lucas had emptied, but he still isn't there. Meanwhile, outside the mall, a vehicle arrives, and 3 masked people with guns get out. Suddenly, they begin shooting at everyone, causing panic as people run for their lives. Many are injured and killed in the chaos, so Juan and Omar fire back at the attackers. Juan manages to kill 2 attackers and notices that one of them is a woman. He is shocked to see her necklace, which hints that she has 3 kids. Juan struggles to reconcile the reality of a mother going around killing people. After the last shooter escapes, Mickey turns out to have been shot and is badly injured in the stomach, so Elena rushes to help him. Just then, a group of soldiers arrives in a vehicle, and surprisingly, Lucas is among them. He explains that he was on the highway and came across these soldiers who are from Campo de Mayo, but when asked how he reached the highway and what he was doing there, Lucas doesn't remember anything. All he recalls is drinking whiskey and blacking out, and when he woke up, he was on the highway. Since many people are injured and need medical attention, they all get into the soldier's truck and head for Campo de Mayo. As they drive away, they notice that the snow has begun melting and the water in the rivers is flowing again. Elsewhere, one of the shooters who had managed to escape is seen entering a tunnel. He comes face to face with many bugs, but they don't do anything to him and let him pass as if he is their leader. In the next scene, Juan has a vision of meeting a woman in the mall before the apocalypse. He soon notices her necklace and realizes it's the same woman whom he shot earlier. The woman then tells him that she's still there, deep inside his mind, and asks him to never stop searching. Suddenly, Juan wakes up and finds himself in the middle of the forest. It turns out that he and the others had come here to collect firewood when he suddenly passed out. Later, we learned that they have settled at Campo de Mayo, where the resistance forces had established their headquarters, and even kids are being trained to shoot and fight. Elena, who is a doctor, is very helpful in this community and is seen tirelessly working to save the injured. Meanwhile, Tano is called by a sergeant, and when he goes there, he encounters Lucas, who reveals that Tano is an electrical engineer. It turns out the military wants Tano to fix a radio to communicate with other survivors. However, this requires him to go downtown, which Tano obviously refuses, as this place is safe and he doesn't want to leave his family behind. Afterward, Lucas tries to convince him, saying that he and the other soldiers will accompany him. He explains that this isn't about personal matters, but about saving many people. However, Tano doesn't agree, and both he and Juan are worried about how strangely Lucas has been behaving lately. Shortly after, a few survivors arrive at the camp, and Tano is shocked to see that Roberto and his wife are among them. Tano quickly approaches him and asks what happened and where Benito is, but Roberto behaves strangely and says there are no survivors. Seeing this, Tano realizes the seriousness of the situation and decides that he will follow the military's orders, even if his wife begs him not to go. That night, Juan is approached by 2 men, and one of them is a train engineer named Franco. Juan feels he's seen Franco somewhere before, though he can't quite remember where. The men explain that there's a train station near the camp and suggest repairing the trains to reach downtown, where the radio tower is located. Juan doesn't fully trust them, but agrees to consider the plan. The next day, they learn that Mickey has passed away, so a funeral service is held for him. Tano now prepares to head downtown, accompanied by Juan, Lucas, Omar, Inga, Franco, and other volunteers. Their first destination is the train station, and along the way, they notice fighter planes in the sky and wonder where they came from. Not long after, they arrive at the train station, where Franco and his team immediately get to work. Most of the team focuses on repairing the train, while a few soldiers keep watch in case the bugs appear. Luckily, they manage to fix the train, and it barrels through the barricade without issue, which thrills everyone. However, shortly after, the train comes to an abrupt stop as the track ahead is damaged. The group continues their journey on foot, but fortunately, it isn't too far. They also spot a crashed plane not far away, leaving them puzzled about what could have caused it. They soon enter a building where some remain on guard, while Tano and the others head inside to repair the radio. Meanwhile, Inga and a few others head out to investigate the crashed plane. Inside, they discover an unused bomb, and the map indicates the plane's intended target was a stadium nearby. But as they step outside, they find themselves surrounded by civilians who appear to be in a strange, trance-like state. Later, Tano finally manages to fix the radio and broadcasts a message to reach as many people as possible. The people of Campo de Mayo also hear the message and celebrate, confirming that the plan has succeeded. The group then decides to take shelter in the building for the night and wait for the rest of the team to arrive. Soon, night falls, but Inga's team does not return, which worries Omar because they have been dating for the past few days. The group then notices a strange blue light coming from the stadium, and Juan informs the sergeant about it. He suggests sending a team to investigate, but the sergeant refuses, saying he can't risk his people and will wait until morning. To pass the time, Juan, Tano, Lucas, and Omar play cards and try to have fun. The game is tense, and when Lucas continues to lose, he suddenly snaps and stabs Omar in the stomach for no apparent reason. After Lucas angrily storms off, Juan and Tano chase after him and find him standing on the edge of the building's rooftop. They try to talk to him, but Lucas begins rambling, warning, "Be careful what you say," claiming the phones are tapped and that someone is out to harm the Foundation. A strange light from a nearby stadium catches his attention, and with a smile, Lucas throws himself off the rooftop. Upon seeing this, Juan and Tano are shocked, but things take a worse turn when they notice a large group of people with flashlights approaching the building. They quickly regroup with another soldier and Omar, who is badly injured and bleeding a lot. Soon, a volunteer approaches them, giving them a brief moment of relief, but he intentionally alerts the others to their location. Next, the terrified group runs away and soon reaches the train while dodging the gunfire from their attackers. They get in, and Franco immediately starts the train, allowing them to escape before these strange people catch up. After finally losing them, they explain to Franco what happened back at the tower. Juan then realizes that the same thing had happened to the 3 people who had attacked the supermarket, like they were being controlled by something. He suspects something is happening at the stadium and wants to investigate, even though he would be alone. Franco decides to go with him and teaches Tano how to operate the train. Moments later, when the train slows, Juan and Franco finally get off, while the others continue toward Campo de Mayo. On the way, Juan and Franco hear gunfire and find a street filled with people and creatures moving around normally. They enter a building to get a better view of what's happening. Here, they are shocked to realize it is the Bugs camp, where the Bugs and the possessed people are training their captives to fight, and all are being controlled. A red light begins to shine from a nearby bandstand, and both the people and the giant Bugs stop to look. At this moment, Juan realizes why he has been having visions and says that he has already lived this, which is how he recognizes Franco. Moments later, they finally see the entity controlling everything, which is a new kind of alien creature with a grotesque, inhuman number of fingers. Juan watches in horror and tells Franco that this is their real enemy. The show then comes to an end as Juan sees a vision of Clara standing in line at the military camp and aiming her weapon at a target.